Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jared Hornsby, and I'm here today to help answer any general or technical questions that you may have. But before we get started, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Beyond the Trends, Personalization, Generative AI, and Composable Architecture for a Competitive Edge in 2024. Here's today's timing breakdown. These numbers are just rough, so please don't hold us to these. At any point during today's webinar, if you have a question, please do not hesitate to submit using the Ask a Question tab at the left side of your screen. You can also chat with your fellow attendees by clicking the audience chat, also at the left side of your screen. Here's a bit about us over at CMS Wire. We are founded in 2003, and we cover the primary topics that you see here on this slide. You can read more of our great content and register for upcoming conferences and webinars, all by visiting cmswire.com. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Contentstack, for making today's webinar possible. Contentstack is the composable DXP leader, and they empower marketers and developers to deliver composable digital experiences at the speed of their imagination. Over from Contentstack today, we have Marina Rusino, who is the Senior Manager of Solutions Marketing, and she will tell us a little bit more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jared. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We're so excited to chat with you and go beyond the trends of AI and personalization. I'd love to pass the mic to Christine to introduce herself.
Hi there, I'm Christine Masters. I am the Senior Product Manager for Emerging Products here at Contentstack. And I'm mostly responsible for doing our automation project and also our artificial intelligence. And some new stuff too. So it's a very, very interesting job right now, especially.
Christine is very humble, but she is quite the guru when it comes to all things generative AI and personalization, and she has helped guide several of our customers through their AI journey here at Contentstack. So
we'll talk all about that.
Your perspective. Yep. Yes, we'll get right in. And my name is Marina Rusino. I'm the Senior Manager of Solutions Marketing here at Contentstack. With some years under my belt with experience in product marketing, and I focus quite a bit on our customer storytelling. So as we dig in throughout the conversation, we'll be sharing some of those compelling examples of what this looks like in action. And just to roughly run through our agenda, we did have a speaker change today, but we're super excited to be here with you all. We'll talk about today's need for personalization in modern digital marketing. We'll go through kind of a personalized digital experiences 101 crash course with you all. We'll talk about personalization at scale and the role of generative AI. And then we'll also have Christine run us through some future trends and save some time for Q&A. So without further ado, I'd love to begin by setting the stage for why we're all here today. So this here is what we like to call a face punch slide. So 90% of consumers expect businesses to know their interests and anticipate their needs, which makes this such a critical time for personalization in digital marketing. But a lot of companies are super overwhelmed by how many different segments they have to cater to, which therein steps in AI and the help of that. But we'll learn much more about that later. So what are some of the current challenges that companies are facing today when it comes to their digital experience? They're lacking personalization, they're lacking adaptability, and there's a lot of operational complexity. And with that comes the trust factor and the ability to take risks. And most companies who are prioritizing digital are very risk averse, which is another big piece of kind of tackling the AI piece when it comes to delivering better modern digital experiences. Contentstack, for those of you that are not aware, we're a composable DXP, and composable technology happens to be a trend that isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So we'd love to define this for everybody as this continues to come up in today's chat. But what is composable technology? It's digital interaction as the primary mechanism for customer engagement. It's omni-channel. We know omni-channel strategy is something that a lot of companies are still struggling to tackle today. It's data-driven by design, agile at its core, and ultimately gives businesses the freedom to build the tech stack that is right for their business.
That's huge.
And we'd also love to double click on some of the core themes that we see today driving growth for these digital experience evolutions. So, customer experience, right? We know that's super top of mind for everybody, especially as customers get more demanding and you have to differentiate out there. You just have to in order to maintain that competitive edge and stay ahead of your competition. Then there's the omni-channel integration piece. Customers today have more channels to engage with your business than ever before. And it's so hard to keep up. And with that, you need to employ every tool in your tool belt to really reach customers exactly where they are with the right message. And then data. We always want to start with data. I know it's redundant, especially as a marketer, we say start with data, but data is really the most important tool you have in that tool belt for making sure that your customers get the tailored digital experience they need. So we'll continue to dive into this digital transformation process. These are some of the key drivers that we see today for digital transformation throughout the companies that we're continuing to partner with and guide through their digital transformation. Christine, do you feel like these key drivers are pretty in line with the stories that we're sharing today?
Yeah, for sure. I really think it is interesting. This is a particularly strange time, especially in the kind of the world of AI today, where there's so much more content being generated, so much more kind of competition between companies, and really trying to as a business, trying to set yourself in front and so that you can get noticed and that you can differentiate your brand, I think is becoming more and more difficult. So I think all of these things and kind of how you are able to get ahead in any one area can be very, very important for a business.
Absolutely, 100%. Now, I'm curious, what do you think today's customers really expect when it comes to digital experience? I know that we've already thrown out the words personalization a lot. And of course, as brands are continuing to struggle to keep up with all the different ways to personalize and different audience segments they have to manage, what do you think is kind of the special sauce?
Yeah, I mean, obviously personalization, and I know we'll talk about that in a second even more, but personalization is key. I'm sure everybody's all been, kind of frustrated when you go to a site and you just bought a refrigerator. So you're the very last person to be advertising, more refrigerators too, right? So but now if you knew that I bought that refrigerator, now follow up with a special cleaner for stainless steel and those kind of things that actually build on that, I think are very important. And because customers will actually get frustrated if they're, if it's kind of out of sync with what is the reality happening in their head. So I think that that's something that, in addition to all of the other things like speed, like usability, all of those things that are also very important.
100%. And I always like to say that personalization is really a linear conversation between a customer and a brand.
I love that.
Yes, it's about continuing where you left off rather than interrupting with something that feels completely out of left field. It's continuing that connectedness throughout a linear customer journey.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. I'll pass it back to you, Christine, to share what is personalized content and why is it important?
Yeah, I mean, I love this slide just because, like we were just saying, customers really expect you to know what's happening in their lives when they come to your site, right? I know that I just bought something from you. I expect you to understand that I just bought that item. And then, it's helpful to me if you are able to give me additional features or additional, compliments to that thing that I just bought. It is frustrating when you don't know who I am. So I think that's something that we kind of need to understand that in terms of data privacy and things like that, that's very important. But customers do want to have that personalized experience where they're able to get the information that they need and find what they want more quickly. So I think that's really important. And then obviously the bottom line for businesses and retailers is that you can actually see an increase in revenue from doing personalization. I mean, that's something that has been shown in many case studies. So that's, I think, a very important aspect. But I will say that a lot of businesses do struggle with generating that personalized content. And that's where it starts getting tricky, where the more personalization you do, the more your costs for content creation increase. Obviously, if you have 35 audiences and every single call to action on your site needs to be personalized for those 35 audiences, it gets pretty tricky. And obviously, that's where AI can come in and help.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about like the use cases for personalized content?
Yeah, I think that this is really important to talk about just for a minute, because I think that a lot of times, especially when you're just getting started kind of in the personalization journey, people think about personalization is, high income, medium income, low income, male, female, and those kind of like demographics. But I think that it's either as important, if not more important, to think about the place where your audience is at this point in time. And I just wanted to show, because I think this is a really good slide that shows that. Think about your customer journey and think about your goals for the customer at each point in the journey. And then that will determine the type of personalization you make for them at that time. So just noticing like something like the interest stage. Someone comes to your site, they're just poking around, looking at things. This is not necessarily the time to hard sell them on the purchase. Rather, you might want to try to get them to sign up for a newsletter, like you said, so you can continue that linear conversation and kind of give them the content that they need at that point in time. Then again, at the very end, when you're talking about they've been there, that they've done research, this is the third time to the site, they've clicked on they've done a comparison. Now they might be more towards the purchase phase. Now, when you start trying to target them with maybe are they a price consumer? Are they looking at the pricing? Are they looking at reviews more? You can kind of tell the type of behavior they have, and then target and promote those things that are necessary for them to like take that next step to make the purchase. So I think that's really, really important to know your customer, to make sure that you know what stage at the buying process they're at, and then what they need at that particular stage in order to convert them. So I think that's, and like I said, the customer journey, I think, is a really important one to look at as far as personalization goes as well.
100%. Well, and now we get a little bit more down to brass tacks. We've talked about yes, personalization is super important, but companies have this overwhelm to really personalize at scale. So how can customers create so much more personalized content without adding more resources or additional costs?
That's the question. That is the key question, right? and I mean, I think that, so one of the really interesting things, especially with my job right now at Contentstack, is that I meet with so many customers throughout the week, essentially, and just hearing, so many stories about creating a Excel spreadsheet and having all the different audiences in this Excel spreadsheet and emailing them to different people to fill in the blanks for the Excel spreadsheets. And the more of that type of thing that you do, the more, like I said before, like it adds additional costs to your process. However, the really interesting thing is, and this is why so many people are talking about personalization so much more today, I think, is that AI really can help facilitate that for you. Whether it's just like a very simple process of just kind of using ChatGPT interface to like cut and paste things and get ideas, that's like the kind of the day one starting point that you can start looking at. But then we also have at Contentstack, we've got some really great tools where we can actually help automate this process, where we have a great customer, and I think we'll talk about this in a little bit more, but we have a great customer that's working on this right now, where every time they create new content in the system, we actually have a process that will automatically loop through essentially all of the different audiences that they've defined for their brand and write a specific modified version of that content for that specific audience. And this is really what ChatGPT and other LLMs like this are great at, taking content and kind of slightly modifying it one way or the other. And it's just that's not something that they would necessarily be able to do without this new technology. So I really think that AI and other associated technologies in terms of automation, things like that, are really making these things possible where they really weren't possible before. I think too, we can also just talk a little bit here about hyper personalization. Again, because of AI and because of other technologies that are now available, being able to, both segment the customer as well as look at their journey, as well as target to their buying patterns or their specific behaviors. All of those things combined to make this hyper-personalization pattern, I think, are just really the the way to get that customer experience that we were talking about that customers expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to throw you a curveball here, but I think like with all of this in mind, I definitely hear some brands saying like, okay, this is all great and exciting, but like there's still that fear around adopting generative AI to segment this granularly. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. So actually, if you can go to the next slide, I think we have some, So okay. This slide, so I think that, so again, I've talked with a lot of customers through the last basically year and a half, I think, since ChatGPT sort of went public in, I think that's 2020, the end of 2022, I believe. And, you know, the first conversations that we were having, it was very much like, what is this? What should I be doing? Are they going to like take all my data and like train against it and like reveal our secrets to my competitors, things like that? That was a big worry for a while. And now the discussion has very much changed into, I need to be doing something with AI. What should I be doing? How should I be doing it? How can we make this more personalized using AI? And all these kind of questions that are much more about facilitation of AI rather than what is this and, you know, the kind of the fear behind it. With that being said, there's still some kind of key questions that I think are, you know, are on people's minds. First off, how do I make it sound like me and my brand? And then this problem with hallucinations where an AI will actually, you know, it's trying to answer your question, it's trying to solve the problem, it's trying to please you and answer your question. So it just says whatever it needs to say in order to answer that correctly. But nowadays there are techniques that have been discovered in the industry to help with that. Where, for example, we're working on something right now that's called retrieval augmentation, where you take essentially a database of the customer's knowledge, and maybe it's the blog post, maybe it's product information, and you essentially look up pieces in that database that are relevant to this particular question, you add them to your prompt, and then now you're essentially, when you're talking to AI and asking it to create content for you, you kind of tell it the answer, and then you ask it the question. And it works really, really well. We still at Contentstack very much recommend this human in the loop kind of technology where we still have humans that are in the process and understand what's going on. In most cases, you don't want to completely automate your kind of AI process, but it is something that, you know, we're seeing a lot more people have really good content when you're working with, again, retrieval augmentation and other ways of managing your brand voice. So that's a great one. Also talking about data leakage and what I was mentioning before about, you know, AI sucking in all your data and then, you know, learning and training on it. Really, that was a fear in the beginning. I think everybody has kind of now established, partially because of the various AI vendors updating their legal terms and kind of the way that they act with their AI, with their APIs specifically. They very much say that we do not train on anything regarding the APIs, which is essentially what a vendor like Contentstack would use within the system. So those are also very safe, and there's no worry about kind of learning anything from your data or having access to it at all. And then the very last thing is just kind of responsible AI and making sure that whenever AI does anything or comes up with content or makes any kind of decision, that you're able to provide it with background about your values. And again, you know, at Contentstack, we're working on some tools to help facilitate this as well. But this is really just something where you can create a safety framework and just say kind of like, here are our values, here's the way that you should behave. And it helps align the AI to be more the way that you want. So whether that's like a certain type of language or more of your brand voice or emphasizing certain goals or values, you can actually say that to the AI through your interactions, and it's able to then create content or perform actions on your behalf that are more suitable to your values and your goals.
That's huge. And I mean, there's so much value-based marketing these days. So do you feel like by not leveraging AI, brands are missing out in a sense?
I mean, certain industries, it's more difficult, right? Because there are certain industries where, financial industries, things like that, it's, especially when you're talking about any kind of content that will be exposed to the public. So in that case, I understand that they might be slower to adopt that. I will say, however, that even for those types of companies that might not feel comfortable with generative content that will show to the public, there's a lot of stuff that you can do behind the scenes in terms of automating processes, streamlining SEO keywords, business intelligence that can use AI in the center of it to kind of be the brains in the center of that process that can really, really help. So yeah, I would definitely suggest, even if it's a little bit, iffy for your particular company, to look into, learn about it, learn what other companies in your industry are doing with it, and then, try to see if there's something like what can you be doing to help streamline processes, to reduce repetitive tasks, to any kind of automation or streamlining or helping out, augmenting your staff, I think is really, really beneficial. And like you said, other companies are going to be doing this. So kind of in order to compete, you should at least be looking into it and figuring out what's best for you.
Absolutely. Well, and I guess I'll pick your brain personally, Christine. I know that you love to nerd out about all things AI. What are some of the top resources for companies that are looking to dip their toe in? And we mentioned that there are some verticals that might be more risk averse, like financial services is probably one that's not as likely to mess around with AI. I know we have a lot of different verticals represented on this webinar today. What are some tools and resources that might be helpful for companies looking to get started that you've found?
Yeah, I would say that, obviously, if you're a Contentstack customer, to please call us. We have had some really, really great discussions, and we have, it's actually, just as a kind of side comment, we have this technical services organization where we'll actually do a kind of walkthrough brainstorming session with you. I've been on a lot of those calls. It's amazing. So those types of things, I think, to kind of call an expert in the field and find out more information about what you can be doing, so forth. I would also say to ask ChatGPT, right? That's actually another great idea, is to just, go be experimenting yourself, look at the different technology that's available, go in there and say hey, this is my business. This is what I'm working on right now. What is the next step that I should be looking at for AI? What are some tools that I can use in order to do that? And you'll see some great results there.
That's great. I feel like ChatGPT has replaced Google for me in some ways.
Yeah.
I use ChatGPT to get answers that much faster. Well, I'm thinking about how quickly I can find answers using AI. I'm just thinking about the impact that has on digital customer journeys, and customers expect it. They want that speed, they want that agility, they want that intuitiveness across the board. And that's just what it takes to drive the conversion today.
Yeah, and it's so interesting you said that about Google. I always feel like when you ask for those types of questions, and you can ask it to do searches for you too, right? And to me, it's kind of it's as if I had done a bunch of research for 4 hours and then wrote up a summary of all the research that I did. But instead, I don't have to do that research. It will just skip ahead into the future and it's done for me. So, I mean, I think that, you obviously have to think about, again, the small chance that there's a hallucination, that, you might have to double check some really important facts, but it still saves you so much time. And, like you said, other people are doing this, and you want to be one of those ones who's able to compete in that space on a personal level, if not on a business level as well.
Totally. We've broken this down a few different ways already, but I'm just thinking we have a lot of content experts or folks on this webinar who are responsible for driving very large content engines. Can we break down, in the most simplest of ways, what are the ways to start using AI today, both internally in your content operations, and then what's the best way to get started in using this in your everyday campaigns? Yeah,
I could think of 3 kind of main areas which you can look at for AI. So the first one, which is very, very easy, and it's a little bit traditional, we've been doing some of this stuff kind of as an industry for even before ChatGPT, which is basically just image analysis, being able to use AI and machine learning to extract keywords out of images, to get alt text out of images. There's some really great tools, pretty much all of the cloud vendors have an image analysis tool that can do that. ChatGPT has a great tool called ChatGPT with Vision, and it's actually able to analyze images and compare them and does some really cool things. So that's kind of one thing. Again, extracting keywords out of text, doing translation with AI. All of those things are basically taking existing text and modifying it in some way. That I would call that kind of like level 1 with AI. That's very safe. We've been doing it for a while. If you're not doing that already and not doing some of those like automations and transformations of text with AI, that's kind of the first thing to look at. I would say the second phase is essentially where you're performing sort of behind the scenes tasks with AI. And this would be like you're taking maybe some logs from your analytics, or maybe some other kind of like list of customers or something like that. And you're asking AI to evaluate it or prioritize it, do research on customers, things like that, sort of behind the scenes AI, automating, I was mentioning before, automating an internal process where previously you had somebody writing summaries for each of your products based on metadata. ChatGPT would love to do that for you. So those types of things, I think, that are not necessarily, generating pure new content, but kind of internal behind the scenes activities that AI can really help with. Again, it's a little bit more risky than level 1, a little bit more on the edge, but it's generally very safe that people can experiment with and can look into. And then I think the third phase is really actually creating new content from prompts or from personalized content, things like that. And that's where we get into, you want to try to have it matching your brand voice. And again, there are some techniques to do that. You can have a profile that basically establishes what your brand voice is that you supply to the AI at the time of content creation. That really, really helps. Additionally, we mentioned before the retrieval augmentation. I think that's still on the screen here. Yeah, retrieval augmentation is another really great technique to add in background contextual information as you're writing that content to help really make sure it's grounded in reality. And again, these are things that OpenAI and other AI vendors have actually recommended to look at. So those are the type of things that when you're doing that pure generated content, which again is a little bit more risky and kind of cutting edge, but that's where you really get the true benefits of this is where you're actually performing that like real generated content. And if you have these like backup safety mechanisms in place, you can really, really benefit from that. I know our marketing team does a lot of this where they're kind of creating these, creating an outline and then asking AI to sort of fill it out for them. And then it's still a human driving that process, but it saves hours and hours of time.
100%. Yeah, I know it's something that I personally rely on in my daily day-to-day tasks. So yes, definitely time savings. I'm going to steer off track for just a second, but it's funny. So we're now in the TikTok and Instagram generation. The other day I saw a reel on AI about how to create a brand using AI in seconds.
Yeah.
And it was one of those videos that kind of came across my feed, and it was like somebody can create a logo and generate graphics and text and copy for product pages in truly a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
And I think my initial reaction to that was nothing but pure skepticism. So what's your personal advice for the skeptics when it comes to taking chances with AI?
Yeah, I mean, try it. I think that's the main thing. I think that especially with some of the newest models, so I would say I'm actually subscribed now to all three, the Claude 3, which is just came out recently, the Gemini Ultra, which came out a couple of weeks ago, and then obviously ChatGPT 4. All of those, when you're dealing with the most advanced models, are just so incredible. It's like having a really smart intern that is helping you out and kind of doing things that you say. And I mean, I really do think that it's amazing. And if you haven't tried that yet, definitely try one of those services and see how it works. Now, that being said, there is, and I know we weren't really planning to talk about this, so this is a little bit of a side thing, but I would say that this is kind of from a personal level and also from a business kind of enterprise level. You have to be careful that your blog posts and that your content on your website doesn't sound like it came from ChatGPT. Yes. I think that has as negative of an impact as the positive side, right? you can tell sometimes when the content has this ChatGPT robotic sound to it. So again, it's very important, to use, like we talked about before, Contentstack has some tools in place where we can help with the prompts, we can help with creating that retrieval augmentation process. All of those techniques to make it sound more like your brand voice is the cure for the ChatGPT sound, right? To make it sound more like you. There are ways to do that. It's essentially through advanced prompting. And that is the way to make it sound more. So that would be my main advice, is to try it out,
Sure.
but also be aware that don't kind of cut and paste anything directly from ChatGPT, because it might sound like it. And that's where you have to be careful.
Yeah, I think you just answered my next question, but I was going to say, now we're hopefully going to inspire so many new brands to go out and try ChatGPT, but we're ultimately focusing on solving for personalization. So if suddenly everybody starts generating copy with ChatGPT, do we then run into the issue of these more generic customer journeys because everything is suddenly auto-generated? But it sounds like that's where retrieval augmentation comes in handy.
Yeah, so both retrieval augmentation as well as, being able to establish your brand voice. And then also, again, like you mentioned, just personalization comes into play here, where if you're both providing it with grounded background information and you're establishing your brand voice and you're personalizing it to that specific user, to their audience, you're going to get something that is very unique and very authentic sounding. So, I think that's really the important, is to make sure that you have the detailed background information in there so that your content sounds authentic.
Of course. So it's about finding that delicate balance and using AI tools really for whatever works for you and your brand voice, and balancing that out accordingly. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Love it. I know that you mentioned you have some great customer stories to share with us. I'd love for you to talk about these a little bit.
Yeah, so we can't quite share names yet. We're hoping to be able to actually have some of these customer stories with names attached in the next couple of months here. But yeah, we have some really interesting use cases. One of them is a customer that, and I kind of alluded to this earlier in the conversation, where they have a worldwide brand, and they're trying to do more personalization, again, towards the customer journey. So both demographic personalization as well as, where they're at in their purchase process. So I think they established maybe 35 different audiences and audience journey points. So, and essentially what they do is they set up an automation. We have a great tool at Contentstack called Automate that allows you to create kind of custom automations, and artificial intelligence can be built in as part of that Automate process. So they create this automation that every single time they save new content that meets certain requirements, it loops through all of the different audiences that they have established, and it asks ChatGPT, again, with background information, with their brand voice, to personalize this content for this particular audience. Don't mention the name of the audience, because you don't want to say, this refrigerator for high income buyers. You don't want it to say the name of the audience in the thing, because that's kind of a giveaway. But you can actually personalize it without mentioning their name, but speaking to the goals that that particular user might have, as well as the goals that you as a business have. So you can say that, personalize this to this audience, while acknowledging that we want to try to get them to sign up for a newsletter. So again, it can do really, really subtle types of personalization in that way, as long as you kind of tell it that that's what to do. So it's amazing. So that's one customer that has been, very successful in being able to implement that so far. The next one is essentially a retailer who's looking at, they're basically using AI behind the scenes to help automate some of their processes. They have a kind of a quality assurance governance process that they have to run behind the scenes. And they basically ask, whenever something is changed, they ask ChatGPT to analyze what changed in this process. It looks at the before and after, and it writes a summary. And then again, using our Automate program, it will actually interface directly with their Jira application, and it automatically creates a Jira ticket for them and puts it to the right person in the right place. So that's a way that they can actually without having to fill out all of those tickets themselves, they're able to automate that process. And then the very last one is just looking at a place to create that hyper personalized content and to be able to either with translations or with targeted audiences and have content specific for that audience at that time. So there's a lot of really great things that we're seeing our customers do, whether it's translation, personalization, and really being able to use AI for any of those tools and do it at scale.
Yeah, 100%. That's great. Thank you for sharing those stories. Before we dive deeper into the Q&A portion of today's webinar, I'd love for you to run through what are some key considerations for folks before they start?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that the first thing to kind of look at, and I think that we have a slide about this. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, we can talk about the data first. Data is important, right? I think that both data, a lot of people talk about making sure that your data is, cleaned up before you do any kind of training processes or things like that with machine learning. I think these days it's more about, well, that's still true. These days it's more about making sure that you have the right behavioral data about your customers so that you can do this personalized journey. You can't target information to them at their specific point in time where they need that information in their customer journey unless you know where they're at in their customer journey. So you need to be able to kind of capture those points as the customer goes through. Are they on the newsletter already? If so, don't promote that to them. Are they, did they already buy the refrigerator? That kind of thing. Any of those kind of data points that you can collect and make sure that you have a customer data platform that you're able to kind of work with that. I think that's some key considerations. But additionally, look at what are you trying to accomplish? What is the point of how your what are your goals for that stage? What are your goals for this journey altogether? What are you hoping to accomplish? I mean, I think those are all things that are very important as you're working through with this. And, just to mention here, that we have on the screen in terms of agility, I think that's really important that you're able to work with the best in the industry, especially the best for your particular business needs. There's a lot of different kind of personalization and customer data platform options out there in the composable world, and you're able to now just kind of evaluate them and plug them in as needed. It's much different than kind of the old days where you had to kind of work with whatever the solution your CMS had, and that's all the choices you had. Now we actually have a bunch of different options that you can plug in because of composable technology.
100%. And I also just want to double click on this line here. Data platforms are only as good as the signals and attributes businesses are collecting. Yes. I think that is such a critical piece to keep in mind before you get started, because you can't personalize if you don't have that data foundation to start with.
Yep.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Christine. This was such a wonderful perspective around AI and personalization. Without further ado, I will open it up to our Q&A.
All right. Thank you both so much. Let's get into some Q&A. Up first, are there any risks for brands today looking to explore with generative AI?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we did talk about a couple of them, right? That first off, you should, and I think we actually have a question here that I'll answer both of these at the same time. Thinking about your goals and your, what are your ethics as a company, and making sure that AI is aligned with your goals and values as a company, as well as just overall human goals and values is another thing to think about. And those are just, just again, kind of advanced prompting techniques that you can just make sure to use the different tools that you have available, whether it's tools that's offered by Contentstack or, OpenAI has their new memory capability or custom instructions. Those are all ways where you can kind of set the tone for how AI should essentially work on your behalf, because really that's what it's doing. It's working on your behalf, right? So I think that's kind of one of the first things to think about. I also think that, just again, looking at the sort of privacy and legal considerations for your specific industry and or business, I would definitely advise anybody who is, if you're an employee at your company, to make sure that you're not uploading sensitive company information into the ChatGPT interface. In that regard, they do train on the information that is in the web interface. When you go to like chat.openai.com, that is a training ground for them. So they're learning based on your reactions to those particular questions and whether or not you liked their answer, things like that. If you're using AI through a vendor or through another company like Contentstack, we're using the API, and the API does not train. So that is a more kind of safer area. But I would definitely advise like your individual employees that if they are using the ChatGPT interface, to be advised not to upload, personal information or information about your company there. You can do generic things like we were talking about, like marketing information, blog posts, things like that. But I wouldn't upload your entire customer list or revenue numbers or anything like that into the interface itself.
Right. All righty. Up next here, how can a company start small when it comes to experimenting with generative AI?
Yeah, I think even though I just said to be careful about the ChatGPT interface, but I do think that that's kind of where you can do some small testing. Again, just be careful with, sensitive company information, but you can go in there to help write emails, help write marketing newsletters, help write blog posts, things like that. That's a great way to experiment with that.
Yeah. I'm happy to share my own personal experience too. Like sometimes I write a headline for a blog post and it's absolute garbage. And I'll type it into ChatGPT of like, write me 20 more headlines like this one. And I'm able to essentially like mix and match and jumble pieces to get to what it is I'm trying to say. And I'm somebody who I think was very risk averse to trying ChatGPT. But to Christine's point, I think you just start small and start playing around with it and you won't know until you try.
And I would say too, do a couple of research or even ask ChatGPT for some prompting techniques, because there are really some great ways that you can say like, act as a marketing expert and write a headline based on this. And here's an example of a good headline that I wrote in the past. Now give me 10 different uncommon headlines for this blog post. So it's really good at kind of coming up with different things with some of those kind of different prompting techniques.
Gotcha. Alrighty, up next here. Can generative AI hinder personalization in digital experiences?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts about this, Marina?
I mean, it sounds like kind of what we were talking about, how like if suddenly everybody starts using AI to personalize, like all of a sudden you have a bunch of generic journeys. And so I think to Christine's point, yeah, it's really just being as specific as you need to be with the prompts and making sure that your values are incorporated into what you're generating. I think as long as your inputs and prompts are in line with what you're trying to produce, then I wouldn't think it would hinder that, no.
I would think too, as a quick side note here, at Contentstack, we have been spending a lot of time trying to think about what does the future look like in terms of both marketing, in terms of what your website looks like and how your website should respond to essentially AI agents who might be searching the web on behalf of their user. And I think that there's a lot of thought process and thought leadership that needs to go into how do we make sure that everything doesn't sound the same, and how are we able to differentiate our brand and to put forth information that is relevant to AI and also humans. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things there that we need to, as an industry, really think about in terms of how to make sure that we can still do marketing and provide information to customers in this world of AI.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. All right, and I think we got time for one more here. What are Contentstack's current AI abilities?
Yeah, so I would love to talk about this. These are some of the, just very quickly, some of the products that I'm personally working on here at Contentstack. So just very quickly, a couple of the things that we've done in the past year related to AI. We obviously have some tools in order to do kind of keyword extraction and image tagging, things like that we've had using machine learning services for a while. But we actually have an AI assistant where you can use this kind of, it's like a toolbar during your editing experience in Contentstack to interface with a AI of your choice. It doesn't have to be ChatGPT. We can have Azure. We can have Amazon Bedrock. We can talk to Google Gemini, a bunch of different services, Claude, I mentioned before. Any of those different AIs can kind of be the brain of your toolbar, and you're able to interact with that AI toolbar inside of Contentstack, so you don't have to like be cutting and pasting or interacting with the window. Again, everything's done through these safe APIs. And I think that's a really great tool for marketers and content writers as they're working in the system. We also have this really great product called Automate that allows you to set up these completely custom multi-step automations that can help streamline your process. And essentially it's just using APIs to different services, but we put AI in the middle of that. So you can actually create these agents that are able to perform activities on your behalf. So I created one that actually goes on the web every morning and searches for news about automation in AI. And then it tells me the news that I'm interested in for that day, all done kind of with AI. So it's very non-deterministic. It's able to kind of search for what it wants to, and then it reports back to me. So things like that, you can imagine being able to do that in the scope inside of a CMS is just really, really powerful. So we're also working on some new stuff that I can't specifically talk about yet that we will have out here in the next couple of months that is really, really interesting. So, again, if you're either a Contentstack customer that wants to hear more about this, or if you're not and you just want to have a quick call about this, I'd love to talk to anybody about this stuff. Even if you have more questions, I'd love to talk to you about that. So feel free to reach out to me and we can have a conversation about that. I love this stuff.
I think that's a mic drop. I feel like I promised an AI guru and we delivered. So yes, thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you. This is so much fun.
All right, that's going to be our time for today. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Marina, for your time and attention. Thank you to Contentstack for making today's webinar possible. And thank you to all of you out in the audience for your time and attention. Today's webinar has been recorded, and you'll be receiving a link to that recording in a follow-up email. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. In the meantime, thank you all once again, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.